Okay, Meridian students, we've been reading Song for a Whale as a school-wide read aloud. Your teachers have all been reading it to you. And unfortunately, without being able to be in school, they are not able to finish it with you. So I wanted to take the time to finish reading it with you. So I will be making short videos and reading chapter by chapter. And I hope that you will take the time and sit and listen to this read aloud as we finish the book together. So I'm going to start where we were supposed to start if we were in school this week at chapter 25. But just in case your teacher didn't get to that, I will do a short recap of what has happened in the past few chapters. So Iris made a song for Blue 55, the whale, and she sent it to the scientist who has been trying to tag that whale, who's not really being able to communicate with the other whales. She got really excited because that scientist did respond to her and say that the next time that they go out, they will play that song under the water and hope that that whale can hear that song. But then that scientist also said that she hopes that Iris comes and visits in Alaska at some point. So that got Iris thinking. Iris now wants to go to Alaska when that song is being played in hopes that she can meet the whale, Blue 55. Her parents said that that's not really feasible. So she got upset, and then she went and talked to her grandmother, and her grandmother came up with a plan for them to take an Alaskan cruise to go meet this whale. And unfortunately, they are doing this without her parents knowing that this is the plan. So that is where we are at in the story, and we are starting with chapter 25. Here we go. Even though it was still early, I pedaled as fast as I could to Grandma's. It'd be good to have a little extra time in case there were any glitches in our plan. Sometimes projects took longer than expected. Like the Philco radio, my stomach tightened with sadness. I missed resting my hand on it at night and feeling the vibrations from the radio programs. And then there was the fact that I couldn't even touch the money I got from selling it. I shook my head. Nothing I could do about the radio. Maybe I'd buy it back from Mr. Gunner unless someone else got to it first. Grandma flung the door open as soon as I pressed the doorbell. She had to have been standing there waiting, or she leaped to the door as soon as the doorbell light flashed. She wore a flowery green dress and a long necklace with flower charms alternating in green and gold all around the chain. Her hair was brushed into long silvery waterfalls. And opening up the suitcases on the floor of Grandma's closet, we checked our list to make sure we weren't missing anything. The last thing we did before leaving the apartment was staple a blue tag from the cruise line around each suitcase handle. Seeing our names printed next to the cabin number on those tags made all our plans more real. We were doing this. Later that day, we'd be rolling those bags onto cruise ships. Then the elevator opened at the first floor of the building. We turned right toward the side exit instead of left toward the front desk. The staff would have questions if they saw us heading the front door with our suitcases. We loaded the luggage into the car without anyone stopping to talk to us. Ready to go? Grandma asked after getting into the driver's seat. Let's go find that whale, I answered. Then I grabbed the armrest as the car peeled out of the parking lot and raced toward the freeway. Slow down, I signed with only one hand so I could hang on to the other. Grandma didn't slow down, just changed the lanes to fly past other cars. Maybe this was a bad idea. She hadn't driven much lately and not on the freeway. If we got stopped by the police or wrecked the car, we wouldn't even make it to the airport. Grandma laughed. I'm ready to start our adventure. Watch the road. I didn't sign anything else after that, so I wouldn't give her a reason to take a hand off the wheel or her eyes off the freeway. We made it to the airport alive. I released my grip on the armrest and slumped back to catch my breath when Grandma eased into the parking space. After getting through the long security lines, we had plenty of time to reach our gate. I wanted to take Grandma's hand and run onto the plane already, but we still had an hour before boarding. We stopped at a coffee shop where Grandma ordered a coffee and I got a lemonade iced tea. A little more grown up than regular lemonade, but without the coffee taste. We shared a mammoth-sized blueberry muffin. It was so delicious, I wondered if airport food was really that good or if everything tasted better because of our trip we were about to take. As we chatted, I noticed Grandma's signing was faster, more excited than it had been lately. It matched the way she looked that day, as if the color was coming back to her signs too. She signed almost like she used to when Grandpa was around, and I wondered if she felt like he was here with us. I had to eat without glancing down at my food so I wouldn't miss anything. It didn't seem as if we had been sitting at the coffee shop for long, but when I checked, I saw it was time to board. We were almost in the last row of the flight since we bought the tickets so late. Grandma offered me the window seat, but I told her it was hers. I wanted her to enjoy the adventure as much as possible. Without her, I wouldn't be there. Under the settings on my phone, I found where we could disable the GPS. I asked Grandma for hers so I could do the same thing. I didn't want my parents to worry about me, but I didn't want them tracking us down either. Hold on, I'll send your mom a message first. She handed me the phone after sending the text. What did you tell her? I asked after turning off the GPS. I told her not to worry, that we're going farther than Surfside and will be gone a few days longer. We smiled at each other and held hands as the plane rolled down the runway and took off. This wasn't a game or a wish or a plan about a trip anymore. We were really going. Grandma was happier than I'd seen her for a long time. This trip would kill two birds with one stone, as Dad would say. I'd meet the whale and Grandma would be herself again. So I remember thinking back a couple of chapters ago, and she kept trying to play a game with her grandmother that her grandpa used to play, and her grandma just wasn't in her mood, and her grandma was really sad. And when I was talking to some students that I was reading this to, they were saying that she was very, depressed. So she's saying not only is she getting something out of this trip, but her grandma's getting something out of this trip too. After landing in San Francisco and picking up our luggage, we shuttled to the cruise terminal, where a huge white ship sat in the water, waiting for passengers to board. I found ours and pointed it out to Grandma. The Siren, the ship that would sail me to Blue 55. It was still too early to board, so we looked around for something to do. I'd been too excited until then to notice I was hungry, but my stomach was rumbling, like an airplane taking off. I covered my stomach even though Tristan wasn't there to hear it. Lunch? I pointed to a seafood place with outdoor seating and a view of the ocean. Grandma took my hand and led the way. The restaurant hostess seated us to a small table on a dock. We opened the menus and pointed to the same thing, a big platter with samples of every appetizer. As I watched the waves next to us, I realized there was a smell I liked even better than old radio: the ocean. Checking in for the cruise was a lot like going through an airport again, only worse because we were so close to the ship. I wasn't going to breathe until we were safely aboard. Each part of the check-in process and every person in front of us was one more thing blocking my path to Blue 55. After getting through the long line for the check-in counter, a woman with big blonde hair gave us our cruise cards, which look a lot like credit cards. They would be scanned when we bought something on board and every time we got on or off the ship. We thanked the woman at the counter, then moved over to yet another line to board the ship. The attendant at the end of that line held what looked like an alien gun. We showed her our cards like the people in front of us had. She waved the gun to scan the barcodes on our cards before handing them back to us. On our way to the metal ramp that led to the ship, a crew member stopped us for a picture. A sign on the wall in front of us read, "Bon voyage," next to the big picture of glaciers and blue water. Grandma put her arm around me and we faced the camera with the Alaskan backdrop behind us. Finally, it was really happening. Even though I was a few days from meeting the 55, I felt like I'd already accomplished something. At the end of the metal ramp that led to the ship, I stopped. "All right?" Grandma asked. I squeezed her hand and smiled. Until then, the trip had just been a plan. Once we boarded the ship, it would be real. We'd sail away from land and try to find a whale. Grandma stood next to me like she understood that I needed to make the moment last. I wondered if she'd like to put down a good book before turning to the last page too. With one hand still holding Grandma's, I signed, "Ready," with the other, and then took a deep breath. Together we stepped from the metal ramp onto the plush carpet of the ship. When we found our room on the 5th deck, a woman with dark brown skin wearing black pants and a light blue shirt with gold buttons smiled like it was the best news ever that we'd arrived. She shook our hands and said something to us. I guess she was introducing herself. Her name tag read, Jojo, Cabin Steward, Ghana. Grandma introduced us and let her know we were deaf. Jojo took a business card from her pocket and wrote something on the back, then handed it to Grandma. I leaned over to read it. Customer relations can page me if you need anything. Jojo opened the door and handed us each a flyer with a map of the ship and a schedule for the rest of the day. She showed us around the cabin, which took 2 seconds since it was about the size of my bedroom at home. After Jojo left, Grandma said she wanted to rest. Even after all the traveling and waiting in lines, I couldn't imagine sleeping anytime soon. Grandma told me go ahead and explore the ship. First, I found one of the swimming pools on the 18th deck. That wasn't even the highest point. There were 2 decks above that with more pools, hot tubs, and a game room. People gathered around the bars, holding bright pink and yellow drinks with little paper umbrellas perched on the edges of the glasses. The ship was like a floating city. It would be impossible to see everything, even with a week to explore. Still, I would try. I ran around like I had only a day to take it in. A few more bars and restaurants were scattered around the ship. On the same deck as customer service were gift shops, an internet cafe, and even a library. A weird feeling that I couldn't place stirred in my stomach. I was restless, as if I were forgetting something. Maybe I'd been so busy working on my plan to meet 55, and there wasn't anything left to do but wait. At the safety drill that afternoon, the crew herded everyone from our deck into one of the bars. They showed us how to put on life jackets and where the lifeboats were, so if the ship hit an iceberg, we wouldn't end up like the passengers on the Titanic. Afterward, we stood on the deck and looked out at the water we'd be sailing across soon. The color wasn't the same as what I was used to. The water on the Gulf Coast always looked a little muddy. This was much bluer. Sea lions lounged on the wooden docks of the harbor. More people with their fruity umbrella drinks mingled around us. The railing vibrated against my hands, and I looked around to see what was making noise. People around us clapped, with their mouths open like they were laughing and cheering. Grandma looked up and covered her ear that wore a hearing aid. "What is that?" I asked. "Foghorn." She lowered her hand to add, "That means it's time to leave." The ship lurched as it pulled away from the dock. If anyone back home figured out where to look for Grandma and me, well, they'd find that ship has sailed. And that's the end of chapter 25. So what I'm thinking is that was a long process that they had to go to get onto that ship, between taking the flight and getting through onto the ship. And I'm wondering if you're thinking about what is happening right now. Do you think that that's something that your parents would be okay with if your grandmother just sent them a text and said, "Hey, we're not just being gone for the day, we'll be gone for a couple days, but that's okay"? How would your parents respond to that? What would happen over those couple days? And you know, what would be happening? Because that's a lot to be gone for a couple days with your parents not knowing where you were. And why do you think that her grandmother wanted to go on this adventure? Why do you think that she's perking up and all of a sudden she said the color is coming back to her skin and she's signing faster and getting more excited? So because her grandmother, the character of her grandmother is changing. So I will be back to read chapters 26 and beyond, but I hope you enjoyed that first chapter of this read aloud online.